All right, everyone. Welcome to the first Sun Belt week press conference. Obviously, conference play getting started, an exciting time here. First off, want to extend our thoughts and well wishes to everyone in Boone and Western North Carolina on everything going there. Definitely have them in our thoughts. And now we'll turn it over to Coach Huff to talk about the App State game.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Happy homecoming week here in Huntington. Really excited about the opportunity to get a lot of the former students, players, alumni, supporters back home. Homecoming is always a good opportunity to see some old friendly faces, and for people who have maybe don't get back as often to come back and not only see a great football game, but our campus, our community, the whole nine. So really excited about that. Extremely challenging opponent this week with a lot of history, not only in my tenure, but well beyond that, all the way back to the old SoCon days. Extremely talented group. Preseason favorites to win the conference by a lot of the publications and evals that are done, with some extremely talented players. Coach Clark and his staff do a great job. Obviously, Coach Clark being from this area, he's very aware of the tradition between these two schools. Some really good players for them offensively. They're really explosive. They can score points. They can score points fast. And defensively, they've been tough and physical for a very long time. So we got a lot of work to do in the next few days to get ready for a huge challenge.
Questions?
Coach, have you had the chance to talk with Coach Clark, obviously all the just the bad things and adversity they've gone through, and what they're up to this week in terms of their practice and making it to the game on difficult times?
Yeah, I went back and forth via text with Coach Clark Sunday after our game, and obviously he appreciated it. And I just told him, hey man, praying for you guys. I know it's a tough situation. A lot of people, not only team and administrative from a university standpoint, but a lot of people in that county are in a very tough situation. So he appreciated it. We went back and forth briefly. I didn't get into how they're preparing or not preparing. Obviously, this is an opportunity, in my opinion, for a football team to come together. So that's kind of how we would approach it. So I'm assuming that's how they're approaching it. It's an opportunity for them to come together and give a little bit of joy, to the Boone community for a few hours on a Saturday afternoon. So I expect it to be something they use, to kind of why we play for our community. A lot of people are without, and a lot of people there love that university, very similar to Huntington. And, for 3.5 hours, they get a chance to bring them a little bit of joy, or at least a mental relief from what's going on, daily there.
When you look at at what App does well, obviously they're historically been able to run the ball, and but a lot of weapons on offense. But it starts with their quarterback. What do you see out of him, and how much has he grown from one year to the next?
Yeah, I think he's really good. One of the things that I admire about App State is they've been very consistent doing what they do for a long time, even as they've changed coaches and coordinators, and players have come and go. The system has been the same. So what you get from that is you get some development. A guy comes in as a freshman, or a guy comes in, has 1 or 2 years, and now he's not relearning, a system. You're taking the next step. I think Joey's done a phenomenal job of taking the next step. He's gone from, just being able to throw the ball to, a receiver, to progressing through the reads now and making sure that all his weapons are being used. Does a really good job of checking the ball down, doesn't get sacked a lot. Even though he's not a runner, per se, he can run, but he's not a guy that, you would put as a dual threat, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. He moves well enough and finds the check down and takes off when he needs to prevent sacks. So that prevents you from being in, long yardage situations where the defense may not be as advantageous. He's really done a good job, over the last, this 4 or 5 games, whatever they've played, of, getting through the reads. It's not just, hey, I'm throwing it to this guy on this play. It's, you see the same concept in a few different guys being taken advantage of. You see, him anticipating some throws, which is, a sign of growth. He was voted, player of the year, and I think he's well deserving of it. It's going to be a huge challenge for us, not only in the back end, but, our front, making sure that we do a good job of getting to him. I think their O-line does a good job of understanding what they're trying to do. They don't, they don't give up much pressure. Even when you do get some one-on-ones, they don't give up a lot of pressure. And then he gets the ball out of his hands quick. That's the one positive or one thing that I think gets underrated from quarterback play, in today's world. How quickly can he get the ball out of his hands? The D-line in today's world, all of them run 4.7, 4.5. It's not the old, where they were big as the O-lineman. It was kind of just, pushing a pile. These guys can move, so even the best O-lines can't block everybody for all day. So when you have a quarterback that can get it out of his hand quickly and get through the reads, it helps your O-line. It helps prevent negative plays. So it's going to be a challenge for us. I think our O-line has done a really good job of creating pressure over the last few years. Coach Street has done a really good job with those guys, but this will be a challenge.
Consistency is something you talk about with them as well on their defensive side. Has anything changed about what they're trying to do, or have they gotten better at anything?
I think, I wouldn't say a ton has changed. There's a few wrinkles. When you say wrinkles, there's things that they've always done that they're doing more of or less of, if that makes sense. They've added some, pieces from a player standpoint, which I think changes some of the defenses you call, if that makes sense. So I think I think they do a really good job, the defensive staff, of being player-based. What can our players do well? Their D-line has always been extremely active. It seems like they just keep graduating a guy. They just put him in the same jersey, same number. They look the exact same. It's like the guys never graduate. But they've done a really good job of recruiting to their schematical strengths, if that makes sense, which allows the teaching to stay consistent. You're not asking a guy who may not be athletically fit to do something that he may not be athletically able to do. So I think they're doing a really good job of playing to their players. The other part, I think just historically, defensively, it's easier to play defense when you got the lead, and they have a team on the other side of the ball that can score points in bunches, so every play doesn't have to be a negative play. They've done a really good job of eliminating explosive plays because, hey, I don't have to, blitz all 11 guys to stop, this play. If they move the ball down the field, we'll create a turnover, we'll get a sack, we'll put them in a situation. If whatever happens, they happen to score, we know our offense has the ability to strike quick and get right back in it. So I think that's allowed the defense to play and not feel forced, which makes it tough on the opposing offense because you're waiting for a moment to take a shot, or you're waiting for a moment for a guy to be out of his gap, and they just play very sound. They force you to play extremely efficient on your side of the ball. This is one of those games where every possession, matters, because their offense gets 2 or 3 scores out in front of you. That's what happened last year. Their offense got 2, might have been 17-3 at one point last year. They get out in front of you, and it's like, well, we got to catch up with them because if we don't, they're gonna lap us. So it puts a little pressure on the opposing offense to be able to kind of, I won't say keep up, but would stay efficient with your drives.
Coach, obviously a team game, but certainly nice when you see kids get recognized. And JJ had a phenomenal game there on Saturday and got recognized by a Sun Belt. And the young man just continues to keep coming and making big plays for you.
Yeah, I'm really excited, really happy for JJ. He's been a young man. Obviously, this area of the country means a lot to him. His family has a huge presence in this region. He has a huge presence in this region. He's been phenomenal since the day he stepped on campus. He is a leader. Obviously, he's a phenomenal player. I don't want to see him continue to get 15 tackles because he plays safety. I'd like that to be spread out a little more. But I think it just shows his athletic ability. He's all over the field. Some of those tackles are in the backfield, so you can't really fault him. But I think he's done a phenomenal job. I think this is just the first step for the level that I think he can play at consistently. If you asked him, there's still things in his game that he wants to improve on. I think it gives our defense a lot of confidence when you have somebody back there that'll bring the hammer and get it on the ground. It allows our defense to play a little bit more aggressively because he's willing to fit his gap. He's willing to play his coverage. And I'm excited for him. He's going to be big. It's going to be a huge challenge this week because obviously when you talk about receiver play, you're talking about the back end. So those guys are going to be, challenged this weekend.
Is Appalachian State still using 2 and 3 tight ends, and they've been pretty effective with that kind of? What's that part of their personality on offense?
Yeah, they do a good job of mixing personnel. They've been an outside zone stretch team, for a long time, and they're good at it. I think that's one of the things that Coach Clark has really done, and obviously he's an O-line coach by trade, but the O-line and that run game, it keeps them ahead of the sticks, because a lot of times you're in second and manageable, which now when you got a really good quarterback, you got the gamut. And they're physical up front. They come off the ball. They're trying to inflict pain from a athletic standpoint. And I think their running backs do a really good job of trusting the O-line. You can watch them play, and they'll go, 2 or 3 plays, negative plays, and then there's one for 40. They believe in that system. They believe in the process of that system that, hey, every play might not go 40, but, if we pound this rock, long enough, one of them's going to break, and that's typically what you see. So we're going to have to do a really good job of tackling because one of the things that I think we've got to improve on is we've given up a lot of leaky yards. You guys probably heard me say that before, where we might hit the guy at the line of scrimmage, but it kind of just leaks into 3. It kind of just leaks into 4. With these backs, they get their shoulders square. The O-line continues to block, so they don't just block you and stop. They continue to block down the field. So those leaky yards where you hit the guy at 2 yards and he gets 3, well, that's a 5-yard gain. So that's where we got to be a little bit more stouter. We got to tackle with a little bit more positioning, so we're knocking guys back. But because of their run game, because of their personnel adjustments, it's going to keep us defensively stressed. So we've got to be able to play with poise. We got to understand that, yes, we might knock them back for 2 plays, but we got to play the next play because it only takes one guy to get out of his gap, and that guy gets his foot in the ground, and the ball's on the safety fast.
Kind of along the same lines, how would you assess the defense against the run, for you guys so far this year?
Our defense, our defense. I think we've done. We did a kind of self-scout getting ready for this game. What have we done? What are they going to see? If you take out the outlier, which when I was in school, the teachers used to drop the lowest test grade, which I was always praying for. So when we dropped the lowest test grade, our first half defense has been really good. We haven't given up a touchdown in the first half. Now I say that at Virginia Tech we had the punt return touchdown. They got a field goal, but we've played extremely good in the first half. The next thing we've got to get to is we've got to get to the point when teams make adjustments. How are we adjusting? And I think that comes from the way we prepare. We prepare to kind of stop what they do. It's hard to kind of prepare for the adjustment because you don't necessarily know what the adjustment is, and you don't want to waste time chasing ghosts. Well, they could run this. Well, they could run the annexation of Puerto Rico, so we got to get a rep at that. Like, you can't do that. So our players get really really honed in on what they do or what they've shown on film. What we've got to get our guys to better understand is, yes, we're honing in on what they do, but we also got to understand what our defense does, because when they make adjustments, we've got to adjust. It's not adjusting to a new defense. It's just within the defense we've called, how do we adjust? I still think, I asked JJ, I said, when you were celebrating, did you know the ball was on the ground? He said, Coach, honestly, I thought it was an incomplete pass. So I still think we can create some more turnovers. We got one on Saturday, which was really good. But when you're an aggressive defense like I think we are, turnovers should be something that kind of validate that. And we just haven't had an opportunity We knocked the ball off of them, but they got it back. In the past game, we've had some opportunities at interceptions. We haven't come up with them. So that's the next area for us. So I think we've done a decent job of playing the run. With that being said, I think App is probably going to challenge us more than any other team, minus the outlier, as far as their committal to the run. I think that's where we've got to be prepared. And I don't take out the outlier. Like, let's act like that didn't happen. Okay, this will be the toughest team on our schedule to this point, because I think they are obviously, offensively they have a lot of weapons, so they could do a lot of things. We can't really just say, okay, if we stop the run, then we can play the pass secondary, because they can throw it just as good as they can run it. So it's going to take a lot this week from a defensive perspective. The other part of that is we got to play complementary football. I think when you say complementary football, if Virginia Tech, we did not play complementary football. In the first half, defense was playing extremely well, and offensively we weren't I call it taking the strain off the defense. We weren't doing that. So all of a sudden you get worn down. All of a sudden now, one play becomes the play. So we've got to do that in order to play well against App.
Coach, how would you describe how A.J. has kind of taken it to the next level? He had a couple of big runs that led to that touchdown, bang, 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 and you guys are back out in front.
Yeah, I think, I think our O-line is doing a really good job, and I commend them every week, and then I tell them, okay, you got to do it again. Obviously, with 4 new starters, you don't know how that group's going to gel. I think they've done a really good job. Secondly, I think Coach Daigie's done a really good job of putting them in really good, advantageous positions because of the possibility of the pass and the RPOs and all of those things. Then I think A.J. has done a really good job of trusting the O-line blocking, trusting his ability. Sometimes when you evaluate backs, if the guy runs to the line, stops his feet, and starts doing that, he's not seeing or trusting the scheme or trusting the block or trusting the angles. But what AJ's been able to do is he's been able to control his pace. So if it looks a little cloudy, he just kind of throttles down a little bit and then he hits it. If it's open, he hits it. So I think what he's doing is he's trusting the O-line blocking. He's trusting what he's seeing, and then obviously he's got God-given talent, so he can what we call hit the home run when he gets an opportunity. So I think it's been good. I also think this is kind of the byproduct of the air raid. Someone asked me the other day, man, wouldn't you love to have Rasheen Ali in this offense? I said, well, I don't know if he'd be good because we would be feeding him the ball. Right now, we're letting the air raid system work, which means defense has got to make a decision. Do we take away this short intermediate pass game that they're running, or do we play the run? So I think this is creating, don't get me wrong, I'd love to have Rasheen Ali. I'd love to have that problem to think about. But I think what it's creating is we're getting advantageous looks. There were at times last year where we were running the ball with Rasheen and there were 8, 9 guys in the box, and we had to try to do that. So I think right now, if you look at those runs that AJ has been able, kind of to hit, the box has been advantageous because defenses are kind of in a decision-making process. Because of the way the air raid system works, when the box isn't advantageous, we're throwing it. So AJ's not getting the ball, or Jordan's not getting the ball, or Payne's not getting the ball where there's an extra guy there that we don't have accounted for, or we can't block, or he's too close to the line of scrimmage. So I think it's all encompassing, and I think AJ's benefiting from it because of his God-given ability, his trust in the system. Coach Lockett kind of really explaining to him, hey, trust this is how it's going to look. His practice habits have been really good, and I think we're just starting to see the beginning of what he can be.
You talked last week about kind of banged up heading into last week. Who maybe impressed you the most stepping into a bigger role because of some of those injuries against Western Michigan?
Make sure this is not a FanDuel question. You word myself correctly. I think Shamarcus Adams played really well. He was a guy who's come in, and he's done some really good things. He was a junior college player, so there was some development that was needed. He's done a really good job of changing his body. He's probably lost 15 or 20 pounds since he got here in December. I thought he did a really good job. I thought Eric Meeks going in He kind of rotated in with Shamarcus towards the end. I thought Eric Meeks did a really good job. He was a little bit more limited, probably maybe got 10 plays, but I thought, in those 10 plays, I thought he did some really good things. I think our D-line rotation, and I'm not talking about the guys we always talk about, Mike Green, Jabari, but I think our D-line rotation has been really consistent. They may not be making the splash plays that you see from a Mike Green or a Jabari, but what they're doing is, if you remember last year, there were times where we'd be playing good defense, good defense, good defense, and then somebody hit us for a 60-yard run. We'd be playing good defense, and somebody hit us for a 60-yard run. Well, when you go the drop off from the rotational guys, from the top guys, not always that they're not good players, they're sometimes not as disciplined as far as being in their gap, playing the right technique. I think our rotation at D-line right now is really healthy. Coach Street's done a phenomenal job of preparing them all. So I think that helps. And then I think, again, when you start looking at our, right now our receiver room is probably the most competitive room we have, because there are a lot of guys in there who can really, do some things. We don't really have a starting group. People ask me all the time, well, who's going to start? Well, it depends on where we get the ball, depends on what personnel we start with, depends on what plays we think we're going to start with. But there's some guys in there. Charles Montgomery's a guy who's probably came in probably having the most production based off the guys returning. He rotated in a little bit and did some really good things. Doc Chapman's a guy that we're trying to find. There's one ball. And it's tough. And in the air raid, it's tough to really say, okay, we're throwing it to this guy, because it's all based on what the defense does. So I think some of the receivers are going to give us the depth and consistency throughout the season. That'll help us. Obviously, anytime you get to see an O lineman or D lineman develop into being comfortable playing him, I think that's always good. That's probably without getting a FanDuel-ish, but that's probably the guys who did a good job.
When you think about homecoming week, obviously some excitement around, just getting people back in the community. But what kind of environment do you expect here on Saturday against an old foe, and a game that generally people get excited about?
Yeah, I commend the fans. I mean, there hasn't been a time, this year, really since I've been here, where they haven't showed up and showed out, regardless of the weather delay, rain. I expected an unbelievable environment. I don't know, typically, in this rivalry, there's been some good carryover from App State traveling as well. I don't know if that will be the same just because of the circumstances. But as far as the herd faithful, I expect, supposedly the weather's supposed to be phenomenal. So I expect an unbelievable crowd. There's a lot more going on than just the football game with we had the Unity Walk. They've got some things on campus all week. So I expect it to be, rocking. I expect it to be loud. I expect the West Lot to be, full when we get here for Thunderwalk. That's the one thing that, there's a few things I can always count on, or I can always stand. We're going to play hard. That's the price of admission in this program. You play hard. And not because I said so, but because God's given you the opportunity to play this game at a high level. You should go out and play it at a high level. And then I know the fans are going to show up. I know they're going to show up in support. I know they're going to show up in great numbers. I don't always know if they'll come back after a weather delay. I don't know if I would either. But the ones that do, the ones that do and the ones that don't, I still love them. But I think that's been something that's been consistent here. We don't have the issues of looking up in the stands and seeing empty stands. I think that speaks a lot to not only our administration, but our community. They support this program, win, lose, or draw. They support this program even when they don't necessarily know the players on the field. Today's football has changed a little bit. It used to be you knew all 11 guys and you knew their names and you knew where they were from and their high schools. Not as much, but the Marshall fans have showed up regardless. They've cheered. They've gotten to know the new guys. That's one thing that probably goes unnoticed. A lot of our new guys have really been embraced by this community. They say, Coach, I was at such and such, getting dinner, and like such and such fan came up and wanted a picture. Such and such fan came up and said, they really enjoyed me playing. Like, Coach, I'm from Texas. I'm from Oklahoma. Like, how do they know me? I said, that's just what Marshall's about. Marshall, they love this team. They love this community. And if you're a part of this team, you're a part of this community. And I think that shows every Saturday. So I expect Saturday to be great. I thank the fans in advance. I know the students will be out. I think midterms are over, or last week was midterms, I think. That's what they told me when we were handing out donuts. So the students should be stress-free. It should be a great opportunity for everybody to come out and have a heck of a time. See a really good football game against two really good opponents.
Anything further for Coach?
Thanks, guys. I hope you guys enjoy the homecoming festivities and look forward to seeing you Saturday. Go Herd.